While we're listening, waiting for everybody to get up here, we just had a blue-headed or a solitary vireo calling. When I learned and went through school, it was a solitary vireo. But they changed the name on me. Now they call it a blue-headed vireo, which probably looks, it's closer of what the name sounds to what it actually looks like. But of course he's not calling right now, so can't really point it out. But they're real pretty, very melodic type of a call. So I'll probably point out, since the bird calls are going to be probably kind of sporadic, I'll probably point out some of these throughout the walk. I don't expect you to remember every bird call that's out there. I certainly don't remember them all. Okay, some of us don't hear as good as others. Okay, but I'll try and get enough bird species written down so we can have a type of a comparison. But I'm going to wait to start writing them down until we get within, start putting our transects down. This is, okay, who knows what kind of tree this is? White pine, you sure?
No, it's a hemlock. It's a hemlock. Deep-furrowed bark.
Alright, it's a white pine. How do you know it's a white pine?
Deep-furrowed bark.
Good, deep-furrowed bark. What else?
All the greens at the top.
Good, all the green and dead stuff is way at the top. How many needles in a bundle?
5.
How big is their cone?
Big.
Real big, okay, good. This is about this, generally the start of where all the old white pines start to grow. It's kind of at an angle here, and then back off, especially on the left side of the path. Once we get further down the path, then we're going to start to see more white pines and old hemlocks cut off, kind of like the half right up here. Down here at the base, this field here, this is where one of the cooks had one of their original lumber mills. I'm not sure if we're going to come out down there, but if you walk to the edge of that field and you look across the creek here, you'll see, if you observe it, you'll see remnants of an old splash dam. Logs that are right embedded into the ground. You see piled rocks. And so this was the original lumber mill. It was a mill pond through here. And if you look back at some of the old pictures, they didn't cut every tree around this mill. I mean, the mill was snug pretty close to this bank. And so they built the mill, but they didn't cut all the trees. So you had big white pines that were kind of hanging out over top of this mill, you know. So they left some of those big pines, which I don't know if they're really standing here today. Maybe that one that's right bouncing on the edge might be maybe the one that's in the pictures that was taken back in the 1880s or early 1900 time frame. But we're gonna, so this is, yeah, the big bark, the thick, deep-furrowed bark is a good character to look for. This is probably in a 300-year age class for pines. To see bark this deep, you just don't see it young, okay? And it takes a long time to get characters like this. All right, let's go up to this tree that's going on this rock right here. Good, it's hemlock. How do we know it's a hemlock?
The branches.
Branches are lower.
Good, we got a lot of lower branches.
Small needles, small cones.
Small needles. Are the needles grouped together in bundles or attached directly singly to the branch? Good, attached to the branch. Now this is an old hemlock. I don't know how old it is, but it's centuries old, okay? And if we look on this tree, it has a number of old characters right on the tree. The first I would like to, I'd point out would be these crooked arm branches that come off to the side. In the back there's some look like kind of like corkscrews. If we look on the bark itself,
It's called the balding.
yeah, here's the balding tree. Part of it. You can see this balding pattern right here. It's a thinner, let's say shallower bark. And you can see the pattern. Notice over here how you have, let's say, deep furrows over here. And then right about here, it's shallower. And then right here, it's fairly flat. Okay. When this pattern goes up the side of the tree a good distance, we can often get an idea the tree has some age to it. Okay.
Is that just from where?
Well, it's kind of like the tree when they're at these type of really old trees, they're not growing very fast, so they're suppressed, some would say. And then if when you, let's say, get like a growth spurt, you expand and you're popping off some of that bottom bark. So you're looking at, that's the best way I can explain it, is kind of like almost like a growth spurt of sorts. But this bark will slough off, and but when it does that, you'll get this type of a balding pattern. Again, you don't see it on every tree, but a lot of trees especially hemlocks, will show this kind of a pattern.
Over a period of like quite a few years, where it's balding now, will it get that deep furrowed bark again or not?
I haven't seen it. We're looking at, like, if we look at, I've seen 400, 500, 600-year-old hemlocks, and it's like once you get this pattern, I don't see the deep furrows forming again. It's usually, and you never see
take
this
2 lifetimes
up
for
here.
it to get like that again.
What's that?
It may take 2 lifetimes to get deep like that.
Yeah, I've just never seen this deep furrowed pattern show back up, let's say, after it has been sloughed off. Because you only really see it towards the base. On other tree species, maybe with ash, you'll see kind of like this slough off pattern almost, but higher up. But on hemlocks, it's almost always down towards the bottom. And you don't see it on the young ones when you look through here. It's just something that seems to be associated with age to it. How long it takes to actually, before you'll see it, you don't see it on every old hemlock. Okay? Just because it doesn't have it doesn't mean it's old. But when you see it going up the side of the trunk a good ways, it's a pretty good indicator that it has some age to it. And as we look out through here, we've got a number of old characteristics. You've got old living trees, and for here in Cook, usually big means old. Okay? And for Cook, when you come across trees that are often 2 feet or greater in terms of conifers, you're probably looking at an old pine or an old hemlock in the forest. Especially if you come across hardwoods in the Cook forest that are 2 feet or greater, you're looking at, very old. It could be 2, 3, maybe up to 400 years old. Okay, so we've got large living trees. We've got large dead trees standing like this one behind. We should have undergrowth here. Now, if you look around, we will find seedlings. But for the most part, anything that around here seems to get above ankle height gets munched down. We've got a high deer population here. If we fence this area off, so that the deer couldn't get into it, we get regeneration underneath. And people say, well, this is how an old growth is supposed to look like in terms of no understory. We should have understory. If you go into the same kind of forest, let's say down south, okay, where it's same old growth, white pine, rhododendron type forest, they don't have a high deer problem like we do. Yeah, they have a little longer growing season, all right, but you'll have a lush understory of a variety of things because stuff isn't getting munched down as soon as it pokes up really above the soil. But even here, we should still have seedlings that should be chest height all throughout here. And it's kind of hard to see right where we're standing here, but as we get further along, we've got some hemlocks that started to grow before the big deer density push back in the 30s and 40s. You can see that the trees that started to grow before that, which are like 80, 100-year-old trees that are maybe 20, 30 feet high, they're missing stuff all the way down the chest height. And in other places it's really evident. I can see it looking through here, but it's hard for me to, it's not a really good place to exactly point it out to you. But since the inception of the park back in the 20s till probably the mid-90s, there was no deer hunting in this section of the park. For probably about 2/3 of the park, or about half the park, was closed to hunting for many, many decades. So we lost entire age classes of forest. And so then we allowed folks to finally hunt back here again. We've gone from deer densities back here being in the upper 60 deer per square mile to, it's still too high for an old growth, but we're looking at around, it hovers between like 25 and 35 deer per square mile now.
I read a paper by Walt Carson who did a study up here of boulders as refugia. Did you read that?
I've heard of it,
Do you see that? Do you see trees that are growing on boulders but not on the ground?
We may not see that with where we're at because the boulders are kind of slim here, but in other areas of the park, yeah. You'll see plants that we don't see growing.
The ones a deer can't reach on the boulders.
But you'll see it. You should see it on. It depends where we walk. But I mean, a lot of the tree roots that a tree falls over and you got the root mass, stuff grows up on top where the deer can't reach. But down below it's just like lawn, just a lawnmower. In other places you have 2 logs that'll fall down side by side. You got seedlings all over the place, inside between the logs and outside, and things grow up inside the middle of the log. And it's just like someone took the hedge trimmers right over the top of that log. So we're working on the deer density, but too many deer isn't healthy. No deer isn't what we want either. So we're just trying to get a balance.